Поїхали.
Добрий вечір, всім привіт. 8 вечора по Україні і 7 у Нідерландах. Це означає, що нам час починати нашу вже 7-му відкриту бесіду. Мене звати Даша Цепенко і я куратор проєкту бесіди про альтернативний дизайн. Цей проєкт є колаборацією ініціативи Holabuda та журналу Telegraf, де ми кожну середу разом з однодумцями з України та всього світу шукаємо альтернативу традиційним методам дизайну у форматі бесід. Ми говоримо про дизайн open source, про кругову економіку, про цифрове та локальне виробництво, про демократизацію міського простору, про нові біоматеріали, про методи критичного та спекулятивного дизайну, як, наприклад, сьогодні, та взагалі про дизайн як потужний метод впливу на ситуації такого швидкого та змінного сьогодення. Сьогодні я рада представити нашу гостю Ґоду Верікаи. Ґода – архітектор та просторовий дизайнер литовського походження, і Ґода наразі проживає у Нідерландах, власне, в Роттердамі, і ми мали зустрітись вживу, але Ґода трохи прихворіла, тому цього не сталося. Так, як я сказала, Ґода – архітектор та просторовий дизайнер. Крім того, вона курує експериментальну колективну платформу під назвою No Purpose – без мети. І ця платформа шукає різні методи та практики, які були б більше орієнтовані на процес, ніж на результат. І дуже часто в своїй практиці Ґода використовує міждисциплінарні підходи та спекулятивний дизайн як інструмент для створення наративів майбутнього. І, власне, сьогодні ми поговоримо про один з проєктів Ґоди під назвою Recycling Utopia. Цей проєкт минулого року отримав відзнаку Архіпрі. Архіпрі – це найпрестижніша премія дипломних проєктів у сфері архітектури у Нідерландах. І цей проєкт фокусується на феномені соціалістичного масового житла у Литві, результату утопічної радянської обіцянки забезпечити кожну родину власним житлом. І з 90-х років Литва зазнала радикальних змін на шляху становлення незалежної та демократичної держави. Але радянські масові житлові квартали так і залишились реліквіями того, що було збудовано 60 років тому. Аби зрозуміти, про що цей проєкт, я пропоную почати з відео, яке зробила Ґода. Тому зараз я поширю свій екран.
Of every single family provided with an apartment. The entire district of prefab concrete blocks were assembled in order to serve the socialist ideals of every single family provided with an apartment. Living in a forced equality and austerity, dreaming about personal luxury. The system of communism did not succeed. Frustration, violence, oppression appeared. Later, the system was replaced by capitalism. At the beginning, accepted as a progressive step. Later, it was followed by disappointment with social structures and consumerist values. If the people's government couldn't ensure equality among society, could machines? Chapter 1. Lithuania after X years. Massive government investments into biotechnologies, bioenergy, and automated agriculture begin. While greenhouses and algae farms spread along the main axis, other territories are left for wild nature to take over. Natural and artificial automated landscapes interconnect. Chapter 2. The system. Massive investments into biotechnologies lead society to the new system, Falk, fully automated luxury communism. Automation, which subordinates to human needs, a basic income provided to everyone, maintenance of automated systems which enable to live a good life with a 10-hour working week. The new system raises new questions. What is luxury and good life for you? What would you do if you had time? Is time the ultimate luxury, or should it be guaranteed as a basic income for everyone? Chapter 3. The City. An automation takes over the fields. Society collectively controls its own high-tech gadgets in a decentralized fashion. Decentralization of the government follows. 14 ministries previously located in the capital, Vilnius, now spread across the country. A city as a ministry, for example. Vilnius, Ministry of Environment and Urban Speculations. Kaunas, Ministry of Transport, Communications and Ultimate Distribution. City Unknown, Ministry of Nothing. If there are ministries of everything, surely there should be one ministry of nothing. To cross the whole country, from the Baltic Sea to Vilnius, now lasts approximately 30 minutes. The newly built Hyperloop, which uses algae bioenergy, connects the ministry cities as fast as previously buses used to connect different districts. The main axes connect the megacity of Lithuania. The continuous movement create new types of social rituals and engagement among society. Chapter 4. Vilnius, Ministry of Environment and Urban Speculations. There is a need for new urban forms of living and sharing. The socialist prefab districts suddenly appear as the most pure and adaptable structures to experiment. The Ministry of Vilnius stimulates inhabitants to treat these districts as a playground of ideas and theories. Chapter 5. Ballistic Healing. Inhabitants start reconstructing their neighborhoods by using coded words in a similar manner to how the Swiss anarchist Hans Widmer described in his mysterious book, Bolo Bolo. Ibu, single inhabitant. Bolo, micro-utopia, self-organized unit. Nima, cultural identity, common interests of a single Bolo. Germune, the first socialist mass housing district in Lithuania after X years, turns into the first district of Bolos. DIY dreamers. Everyone is a handyman in this Bolo. Luxury for them is free space to experiment. They build extra structures, connect flats and houses. Collecting points work as open sources of materials and objects, which can later be exchanged and reused. Residents here can express their three-dimensional ideas by building new strange spatial objects. Empty space is full of potential. It is not for objects or machines. It is for people. The ground floor is always fully shared and used as a wood, metal workshop, 3D print lab, or as storage for tools. The blocks, little by little, turn into huge house machines. Urban monks. Outsiders find here a place to hide. These ibis just want to escape, enjoy snail speed, and do nothing. They do not put effort to fix a broken roof or control the trees and moss taking over the buildings. Silence or raindrops are the most pleasant sounds. These ibis develop their own urban rituals. No one is the owner, no one is the tenant. No one is counting who came and who left. Biofreaks. Luxury they find as the ability to be nostalgic about old farming techniques, local vegetables, bees, and apple gardens. These urban shepherds rediscover the primitive, tactile, slow pleasures of life. This Bolo is always under construction. Some prefab houses are being disassembled and turned into single-family houses. Others remain the same. Green areas, allotment gardens, spread in between. No one knows why, but inspired by the mysterious 20s movement Kibo Kift, these contemporary farmers develop their own costumes and other rules linked to the community. Pleasure futurists. Luxury they see as an ability to enjoy and not be blamed for it. This bolo, in an urban experiment to observe how people can live in complete luxury adapted from the capitalists, and meanwhile maintain the automated systems. The greenhouses here connect work and leisure. Corbusier's Villa Savoy is affordable for everyone. Private villa blocks surround the shared pleasure pools. Artificial landscape embrace this bolo. The dreams about sun shining 24/7 become a reality. Various relationships, singles, couples, thruples, digital relationships, human-robot romances appear. Here, different types of future love are accepted. Epilogue. There could be hundreds of different bolos. These four just happen to live next to each other. A city, a beautiful, ugly city, a playground of thoughts, concepts, an outcome of the system as well as an outcome of resistance. The next system replaces or recycles the previous one. None of them are perfect, but every one of them promises something new. To be continued.
Thank you very much, Ґода, for such a beautiful project. Can you unmute yourself? Yeah? Oh, I still don't hear you, actually. It says that you're still muted. Yeah. Я можу поки Ґода анм'ютить себе, сказати, що дуже класна послідовність, бо минулого разу у нас була бесіда з Кейсом Донкерсом, і ми дуже багато розмовляли про феномен міста як лабораторії. І от, власне, мені здалося, що для мене місто як... Sorry, like, Ґода just wrote me that there is a technical problem and the host muted her. She cannot unmute herself. Можна розм'ютити Ґоду? Вона каже, що вона не може себе розм'ютити. Це щось в системі. Oh,
yeah, I think it works now.
Yay! Breaking through with adventure.
Yeah. Hello everyone, first of all. Didn't have a chance yet to say hello. Yeah, so thanks for inviting. I'm really happy to be here today and share a bit about my project.
Yeah, we're happy to have you. And yeah, first of all, as I started, thank you for such a beautiful project and also the video, which communicates really well.
Yeah, thanks.
I a bit started in Ukrainian, and I said that during our last talk, we were talking with an former main urban designer of Eindhoven, Kees Donker, and he had this concept of a city as a lab. And then sometime we were talking about what it actually means to have a city as a lab. And then, in my opinion, a city as a lab is actually a city as a playground. And your project really illustrates it very well. So I guess my first question would be, I myself, I can relate to that project very well, because I'm from Kyiv and I was raised in a panel house like that myself. So basically half of life I lived in this kind of atmosphere. So I'm curious, what kind of relationship did you have to this kind of house, or did you had a personal relationship with them?
Yeah. So I actually grew in a very different place. It was a private house surrounded by forest, so not really a panel housing or anything like that. But when I started studying, I moved to Vilnius, capital, and then 1 year I had the chance also to live in one of these houses, just because it was basically the only really affordable place to live.
Yeah.
And many students choose the socialist mass housing districts, even they're not very liked, but yeah, it's a quite affordable place to stay.
Yeah.
And and then I don't know, I was just always curious to learn more. How did it started? What kind of visions these people had when we started with mass housing districts, which are extremely massive. And if here, let's say in the Netherlands or in Belgium, you can see sometimes quite similar buildings. The way they look, they are never copied in such a massive numbers, I would say. And for me, this is a big difference what we have in Eastern Europe or Central Europe, let's say.
Exactly, because it's like literally copy paste, copy paste, copy paste.
Yeah, and for me it was really interesting how this whole concept of socialist mass housing started, and especially in Lithuania.
Yeah.
So this was maybe initial idea, just one thing that I experienced myself living in one of these buildings, but also just general curiosity.
Yeah, and then you started your research question what ideals are or were hidden back in the time in the fabricated blocks. So how did your journey went, and what ideals did you actually discover?
I was actually doing this research. I didn't really know where I will end up, and this movie, let's say, it was a very final outcome of my research, and I started it by collecting information and reading more like theoretical books.
Mm-hmm.
There is one Lithuanian theoretician, Marija Drėmaitė. She wrote a book about Soviet modernism in architecture in Lithuania. So in her book, I found one idea she was proposing, and she said that the biggest promise by Communist Party was to provide every single family with an apartment, and actually this was the main ideal and the main kind of concept, or the ideal to reach. That's why this mass housing has started. So for me it was quite utopian, I would say, and especially nowadays living in neoliberal society, I think this is quite a big challenge, let's say, to provide every single family with an apartment, and if a state gives such a promise.
Yeah, and then as far as I understood, you started to take interviews from the actual inhabitants of this.
I think I collected maybe, because I was already living in the Netherlands, so I could do it only while I was back to Lithuania. So, for example, this was actually some old lady who was living in a building already for 30 years.
Oh wow!
And she was telling quite interesting stories. That, for example, many people who were living in Old Town, they were told by local government back then, like by Communist Party, that they have to move to some socialist districts temporarily until their buildings in the Old Town will be renovated. And then we never got it back, So like this kind of strange stories appeared, and then I was quite curious, because people who were living in these houses were very much willing to share. Not all, but especially older ones. I think they just really appreciated that someone was listening to the stories and to their memories. And what also stuck in my mind, that basically everyone was telling the same, that now these districts are in kind of limbo, that they are not really moving further, and all the courtyards are filled with cars, and there's no really social life outside, and everyone is very distant to each other. And of course, there were also maybe similar situations since the beginning in some buildings, but I also, while collecting interviews, I also heard some stories that people really telling that the community feeling at the beginning was quite strong, because many people also moved from smaller towns or villages they came to city to work, and but together they also brought this kind of village lifestyle, countryside lifestyle. So they were having this collective gardens, even in between buildings, and some similar things, which I actually later adopted and reused for my final movie, let's say final narrative.
Yeah. And then we move to the next question, because actually after that you moved to the utopian theories from the 20th century, and that is quite like an untypical method to do if you're doing a speculative project. What was your motivation, or at which point of the journey?
Yeah, so for me, in general, the whole topic, even it sounds extremely pragmatic. Some things what I was reading or listening or hearing from people, they sound for me so utopian and surreal in a way that I thought that maybe it would be interesting to approach this whole topic from a bit different perspective. And then I started getting into more like utopian projects from 60s, basically, when those mass housing districts started.
Yeah.
And even it seems quite far away from each other. For example, this was a project from Constant, the New Babylon, Dutch artist and a citationist. And he was working mainly 20 years on this project New Babylon, which was quite influenced by Guy Debord and also neo-Marxist views on architecture, on city, on labor. And he was very fascinated with automation, and that he was proposing that people finally will be freed by automation and they will have time, which is kind of the biggest achievement they can earn. And then with this time, they will need to find what we want to do, and they will become homo ludens, like spontaneously playful new man. So this was quite a utopic attitude, and later, of course, it also evolved differently. But what I liked, even he was Constant wasn't really an architect or urbanist, but his methods, like building models or working on new layers on the maps and using different kind of tools were quite architectural.
Yeah.
And which made me think that maybe I could also approach my project a bit like even keeping it somehow architectural, but also looking at it much more radical, not really staying at the same context what we have right now.
Exactly, but also using tools that are not always used in architecture, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Fictional narratives, but then, then you came to this reference to Hans Widmer, how to spell it?
Yeah, I think Hans Widmer, I guess, because he's from Switzerland, but from German-speaking part, Zurich.
Yeah,
or at least he's based there. Yeah, and actually I was doing this research and I was going deeper and deeper into this context and having some references, but somehow I couldn't combine all the information, you know, and then I was suggested to read the book called Bola Bola, which is written by Hans Widmer in 1983. And it was a bit like eye-opener for me, because it was quite a radical approach. He was talking a lot about the trends of society, economy, politics in 1983 when the book was written. But also he had very critical way of looking at it, and also very innovative because he was proposing a lot of different types of living in future.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, this book was it's quite beloved by anarchist communities, because it's talking mostly about self-organization, and his whole idea is the Bola as a microtopia or unit where people live basically by self-organizing themselves. So and they try to be as self-sufficient as they can be, living in a small unit. It's around 500 inhabitants.
Yeah, and I briefly wrote something about this book, and I really now want to read it because it sounds super fascinating. And I this is the back of the book cover I found, and it because he had a big number of these bolos. Right? Now I see sim bolo, les bolo, play bolo, no bolo, sad.
Yeah. And also he was talking a lot about that the borders of countries will disappear and different kind of unions will be created, and that this bolo also will have a beginning and also the end until the world evolves into something else. And yeah, but I understand, but a lot of his ideas were very, let's say, fictional, but still I found them very, very exciting. And what I also liked that he was inventing the new language. So he was using new language to describe different units, different structures of society. So that dictionary for me was also, I adopted several words from him.
Yeah, we could see in your video like Ibu. Yeah. Yes, now I'm sharing an image. It's like different ways of combining this bolo.
Yeah, and also what I liked about his idea that even a self-sufficient or self-organizing unit, we always imagine some kind of hippie community or more like left-wing, let's say, people gathering around and doing DIY things. But he was also talking about different bolos and not necessarily this typical hippie community. And I also tried to adopt a bit of this concept because I didn't want to go only to this DIY direction, because I thought like it's maybe interesting to have to imagine having bolos with quite different ideas and relationships, and then create sort of tension in between and try to imagine what could happen in between these different groups of people.
And how could they coexist together?
Yeah.
And what was the labor situation in his concept? How did people work? Did he also talk about automation?
No, this automation was actually, I mostly used it from first Constant, and then also the book Full Automated Luxury Communism.
Yeah.
But he had some ideas, but it was mainly he was talking also about food production inside Bolo, and that everything should be much more decentralized, that people wouldn't need to move so far anymore.
Yeah, it's funny because I read that he said that he imagined people, like inhabitants of Bolos, moving in their pajamas within the Bolos.
Yeah.
So, like,
yeah, so it was, he was thinking more about like a very centralized inside, but decentralized and bigger scale units, and that most of facilities are inside the Bolos.
Yeah, now I'm sharing this basically his created language with all these words and units.
I didn't use them all because it's actually a very extensive book and a lot of things he's discussing, but I mainly used Ibu, which was an individual person, then Bolo, which was this community or like that unit.
Yeah.
And for me, maybe the most important was Nima.
Nima.
This is kind of cultural identity or common interest people share, because I thought it's important, and basically this is how I try to distinguish different bolos.
Exactly, but it's also in what he believes, because he said we don't design buildings just to live there, but we design them for like people with same interest to interact. So for him, Nima was also super good.
And I try to use it in my project, but also in his book. I also thought it's interesting that this importance of Nima, because many times now when we imagine communities, they also very somehow homogeneous in our minds, and having very similar lifestyle and similar people. Like as I told before, a bit more like hippie community lifestyle, and I was trying to imagine a bit more diverse community.
I also liked actually personally the Taku one. So he mentioned something that I didn't understand, is it like within all bolas, but then he said that all, like the inhabitants, they have really limited amount of belongings which could actually fit only in this small box, and that's it. So
yeah, actually I don't really remember very well every single part, because I was also not reading the whole entire book, but I was reading chapters which were a bit more relevant to me, so I also don't really, it was like 2-3 years ago.
I can imagine.
Maybe
This is too much when you have all this
yeah.
To read. No, but yeah, I just discovered it today as well.
Yeah, he had some a lot of nice concepts, I think, and it was written 1983, but I think we are still very relevant nowadays.
Yeah. And okay, now coming back to your project, can you tell us more about Falk, the concept of Falk, fully automated luxury communism, and like in general your views on a possible future with all automation?
Yeah. So basically, this idea, how I found, I was just going through Vice website some time ago. And I end up reading some text about future living and automation and like this general futuristic things.
Yeah.
And then I end up reading an article written by Aaron Bastiani.
Mm-hmm.
He's a British author based in London, and it was an article from him, but and the book back then was not published yet.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was published this, I think this year, or maybe beginning of end of last year.
It's like a preview. Almost.
Yeah, so it was a short article written by him on Vice, and was about full automated luxury communism and the idea that automation will take over many fields, and then basically machines will do most of work, and people will have people will still need to maintain the machines, but they will have much more free time. Yeah. And then also it will create some kind of general base of finances in the country, which will be spread among people. So everyone will have this basic income, which is quite already quite a lot talk topic, and many people have different opinions on that. Mm-hmm. But he was mostly elaborating on kind of future living and this automation, that this automation will create different lifestyle, because we will have time, and now actually many people simply don't have time to think what we would like to do, because we just do work for living.
Exactly.
But it was quite I think it's not like a completely new idea or something, but I don't know, to be honest, it was a very catchy and a bit funny name, this full automated luxury communism, and I thought it's also a bit challenging and provocative to use it in the context of Lithuania, which experienced also the dark side of communism, and I thought somehow was strangely matching the topic.
It connects. No, absolutely. Yeah, it really reminds me of this book, Inventing the Future, Post-Capitalism and the World Without Work. I wonder if you have read it, because it actually...
I know this book, but I actually haven't read, but I know this book, yeah.
Honestly, I haven't read it myself. I mean, I read just drafts of it, and I still reading list, but yeah, it talks exactly about the same. Asks the question, if we would all get our basic income, and if the work would be automation, then what will we do actually? And it raises the question, what do we want to do, and what do we do with our time?
Exactly. And I think it's I used this I looked for the condition to in order to create this bolas, to use this bolas actually.
Right.
So for me, this fully automated luxury communism was some kind of condition which would allow to experiment more with living and sharing and doing different activities. So yeah.
And it fitted quite well. So now I'm sharing actually a still from the video where you mentioned that the Hyperloop will arise, and it would be possible to cross the whole Lithuania within 30 minutes. Then you mentioned that new social rituals will arise. No, new social types of rituals. So sounded very intriguing for me, and I was curious what kind of social ritual, for example.
I was actually my project was also later followed by I also published a fictional newspaper which was elaborating a bit more on this type of new living and yeah, I was imagining more that if the transportation is so developed that it can bring you from one part of a country to another in a couple of hours or like half an hour, I don't know.
Yeah.
Then it will create completely different understanding of distance and geography and cities and this idea actually of Hans Widmer in Bolo Bolo about countries without borders or cities without borders or more like geographical division. I was thinking that actually this fast transportation could also actually diminish the borders and create very different lifestyle, maybe that you could experience much more of the same country in one day, and basically to even if you work, you could live in one city, work in another, do something else in a third one, and yeah, in my project I wasn't discussing it much, but I was elaborating a bit on that.
Yeah, no, it's indeed a relevant question. Also, like the notion of a scale then changes. What size was seen as something huge, then at some point looks as something tiny. I don't know, like because I can compare myself when I came from Kiev, which was huge, and for me, a walk, 20-minute walk seemed something very short to do. You know, a short thing. But when I moved in Eindhoven, which was a small tiny city where you can cross the whole city in 20 minutes by bike, I guess already like a 10-minute walk seemed super far, you know. So the scale really changed. So I can imagine in your case it would completely change the perception. And, then you mentioned also a bit about the newspapers. How did it work? What part of your methodology was it? How did you?
Yeah, basically, actually, when I started creating this narrative, I couldn't stop. It was like so many ideas I had was just like coming out, and then I I first actually wrote a narrative, and then I was working. Like next to it, I was already working with visual material, but mainly I produced it after I already had some like draft of the narrative. And after I finished the video, I already received some comments, but also for myself, I was thinking that it would be interesting to produce something which could already talk a bit about what happened after, you know, because I kind of created this intrigue by starting this whole utopia, but then there was not so much information what would happen after. So in this newspaper, I was trying to imagine these possible scenarios and possible confrontations between different bolos or different cities, and also using appropriating the method of propaganda in a bit humorous way, let's say.
Which feeds to the idea of communism.
Yeah, I was also before, while researching, I was exposed to this propaganda newspapers and posters and ridiculous material sometimes. So I was thinking also for this new world of bolos would be nice to use some of them.
Yeah, from which name were you writing? You had like a journalist character there, or?
It was. I was just writing as like a third person. I always try to keep a bit of distance, and also for movie narration, I chose a masculine voice. Like I asked my friend, because I somehow wanted to keep it a bit distant. I didn't want to sound it too personal, but it's and too sentimental maybe.
Yeah. I guess it's also important in this kind of fictional projects to keep it a narrative. Makes it more serious and emphasizes the
Yeah.
Oh, well, okay. I'm sharing the next image, and then I'm wondering how you mentioned about the Vilnius as a place where as a place for urban speculations, and I was wondering, did you ever try to embody it? Did you do like actually workshops with different people?
No. I in Lithuania I couldn't. While I was working here, I was working on this project in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
But I used also like modeling, and I just built the kind of working model of the district. This is the first. Žirmūnai is the first socialist district in Lithuania. And it was also the district where I lived. So for me, was also something nice to imagine, because I knew that district quite well. From my own experience.
So you basically you made a model of the district as it
was. I made a model, and I was doing workshops with myself, I would call it. And sometimes, of course, it was a huge model, actually, maybe 2 meters by almost 2 meters by 150 or something. So I was discussing with my classmates, and because it was my graduation project. So.
Nice. And also, like in the video, at certain kind of bolos, you could already see some design of the bolos. So I wonder how like what was it defined by?
Actually, I really let it flow. First, I just started. I don't know. I was just trying to play a bit with the model, and trying to imagine. Not much playing with the buildings, but more with the space in between.
Right.
Maybe because also actually my master was called the interior architecture, but so everyone would think immediately it's about interior design, but actually it was more about spaces in between on different scale, from like object scale to city scale. So for me, this space in between and this interior space in between building was somehow most interesting, because it was really the space which is shared, and how is it shared, and who's taking care and responsibility of that. For me, that was maybe starting point.
So it's this constant change from micro to macro, and from macro to micro. But like still about workshops, I'm curious, because we were introduced to each other by Robert, and he knew you from the workshop that he did with you. So, and I'm wondering what kind of workshop was that? What was the concept of it, and how did the process?
That workshop was a bit maybe less fictional. It was talking about affordable housing, and the initial idea was I was supposed to go to Prague and work on existing area, which is under development right now. It's not a socialist mass housing district, but it's more like a new district, and the main goal was to create. In my workshop, my group, the main goal was to speculate on possible regulations which could provide affordable housing within the new district. So either it would be state regulations, or it would be some kind of agreements with the real estate or people, or different models which could provide affordable housing. So so the workshop, unfortunately, it couldn't happen in Prague because of Corona. So we did it online, and we had the discussion, and then students not only students, participants of the workshop had to prepare some proposals for this regulations. It was like 5 bases for affordability in the new district, imaginative district.
Sounds great. Then okay, back to your project and the bolos. If we imagine that it at some point it becomes a reality, which type of bolo would you choose? You can choose like from those that you have, but could be something else. I personally like the last one. The 24 hours.
Yeah. We all I was discussing also with my tutors that I was thinking that at the moment probably I would go for DIY bolo because it very much fits with mine and my friends' ideas about this temporal structures and spontaneous building and experimenting with space and doing this more like physical activities within your environment. But later, I would also probably move to the last one, which is the most luxurious and provides lots of pleasures in different ways.
Yeah, both ways. If I would live for some time in the luxurious one, I would urgently would love to move to the DIY ball.
Yeah.
DIY ball actually is a physical representation of your project because it's all about transformation. And if I would imagine it in reality, then actually it would be that DIY ball. And also another question similar to the previous one, if we would imagine the fully automated future, have you thought about what kind of work would you do, or what would happen to a profession of an architect in that scenario? Would it still be relevant?
I think we will, even in the most automated future, we will still need people to have this kind of concepts and ideas and a bit more like creative thinking, let's say.
Yeah.
And maybe still the speculations about future will be necessary. But I agree that lots of architects' work, which many people still do today, I think they will be gone in some years. Maybe not next year, not in 10 years, but at some point they will be gone because many things can be easily automated and there will be no need for that anymore.
Exactly, and then the next step, in my opinion, would be that then suddenly, like, all people, in order to survive, they would need to be creative, somehow.
Yeah.
The value of creativity would also fade because that would be the norm.
Yeah, that's also, of course, then maybe we will have like over population of creatives,
Yeah.
There will be nothing to do for all this creative mind.
No, so it's nice to see. But I also found out that actually Hans Weidner, he embodied, so he put this whole concept of bolos into an actual housing. And I unfortunately didn't find the plan, but I found Kraftwerk thing.
Yeah.
A couple of more buildings.
I actually first I didn't know about it. I just read a book.
Yeah.
And somehow I maybe it was also because I was already finishing my project. I didn't have much time to dig into who was this Hans Weidner.
Yeah.
So I was fascinated by his book, but I didn't read really his biography or something back then. And later I was actually presenting my project in one of his Archipre presentations, and then one guy came to me and said, "Oh, it's very nice that you use this bolo concept because I gave a presentation about it some time ago, and that guy was a tutor from Sandberg, I think, from Amsterdam, and his father has translated bolo into French, I think." So this was his personal connection, and then he started talking and telling me that actually Hans Widmer also was one of those initiators of kind of real bolo in Switzerland, in Zurich. And then I found out that really he created this initiative. Not only him, more people, but we started this idea of collective living and also self-sufficient living and affordable living and inclusive living. So now there are several this cooperative housing projects in Zurich. So I think in picture you see it's the first one which they managed to realize.
Right. Yeah, and by the way, the guy is him.
Yeah.
Hans Widmer. Yeah, and like, yeah, it's obvious that your project is relevant not only for the Lithuanian context, but for many other countries in the East Bloc. How do you think your methodology can be implemented, or which role does your project has?
I think that because since I graduated, actually I have presented this project quite a lot of times, and also I had a personal exhibition in Lithuania, in Vilnius, because for me it was very important to show it in my own country, because one thing is to present it in Dutch context, and another thing is really to bring it where it kind of came from. And I liked because it was interesting. It created different reactions, and people were very interested, and they were wondering, is it really fictional or could it be reality at some point? And some people would just come to me and say, oh, I want to live in this bolo, or like, let's start it. And even this kind of comments I received. So
young people probably.
Yeah, of course, like more like young people. Yeah. But no, why I actually started this more speculative project, because I was researching the context, and since Lithuania in 2004 entered European Union, the official renovation of this block houses started. But basically, what it mainly covers the improvement of heating and insulation and some facade paneling, which creates a bit more pleasant image, let's say, for some people, maybe not for me, but and that's all, you know. And I was thinking, yeah, but to be honest, it's not only about of course it's important factors of better living, but it's not only this. Like, what about some social connections? What about public spaces? What about, I don't know, maybe new types of living in these buildings? Because there are, of course, old residents, but there are also some young people already living there. But this kind of, now I think everyone experiencing very anonymous lifestyle, you know, no one knows no one, and that's why for me this official renovation as kind of final point, it didn't seem it didn't seem challenging at all, to be honest, because I really, even I see these buildings renovated, I mean, nothing has changed much, to be honest.
Exactly. Yeah. I wonder, do you have like other projects where you combined methods of architecture and storytelling? Did you use it as a tool now?
No, at the moment, actually, I'm working on a project. I started it recently. It's a project in a collaboration with Architecture Fund. It's in an institution, main architecture institution in Lithuania, and they have invited me to participate in the program this year, which is called Building Narratives. So it's quite relative and connected to my previous project. And I'm working now on another socialist mass housing district in Lithuania. And at the moment, I'm in a phase of collecting information, and I'm trying to start some collaboration with local people. And then I want to turn it into the narrative and to create some kind of docu-fiction story, which would include both real facts combined with some fictional elements, and at the end of August it's supposed to turn into audio walk around the neighborhood. Yeah, but it's nice because, but it's also quite a challenge because it's not so easy to attract local people to join, and I think especially because I'm still here in the Netherlands and I'm going to Lithuania back in August.
But also especially now in this weird time.
Yeah, and one thing is that people, I think, they're a bit tired of this online talking, so they actually really miss live meetings and live communication.
Yeah.
And another thing in general is it's not so easy to involve people when you don't know them and you are kind of stranger from, especially not even living in Lithuania. So who are you? What are you doing?
Even if you're Lithuanian, at the moment where you don't live there, you immediately somehow.
Yeah, it's a bit. I feel myself a bit like a stranger, but I'm very curious, and I hope it will work out at some point.
No, it will. But then it means that actually you're making it as a method. This speculative.
Yeah, I try actually for a long time. I wanted to try this audio walking because I have tried this thing in different places, in some theater festivals, and I thought that using kind of same method of narrative, but turning into a more like experience, not really just like something to watch. I thought maybe it could be nice to try, but it's also a try out, so can be a failure completely.
Oh, I just looked in our chat, and there is a message from Robert. It ended, so I guess it's related to the workshop, and he writes that it ended as a real case study in one of Prague's gentrified neighborhood. Yeah, that's it. It ended as a real case study, so the whole method was not real.
Yeah, it's also because I couldn't really participate in the workshop on the site, so our part was a bit more like abstract and speculative.
I actually think that this whole new, not really new, but somehow newly established profession of speculative architect or speculative urban design is really relevant. How do you see its relevance? Because it's not really recognized in the mainstream field.
For me, I felt that this is a really way to first to create a field for discussion, because especially this topics like socialism as housing is quite a stigmatized topic. So with the speculation, I found it much easier to start talking about it and maybe start discussing that the way how it's going right now, it's not really the way maybe it should be, but it also opens up like the whole discussion, not only for let's say people in the field, not only architects or designers, but also people maybe not really connected to the field, because it touches on upon so many topics that everyone can somehow relate. So I think this speculative design, it's interesting field because it can also connect very much to social topics, to political topics, to some scientific experimental design fields, which I think it's quite a broad field, and it's not really discovered yet, but there are many possibilities, and for me it's quite interesting to work in this field for a while.
Yeah, but also it's getting there, because recently Liam Young, who is, you probably know him, he's one of the most famous like speculative architects, and he used this profession, and he lives in the Netherlands, but he made in SciArc a special department of fictional architecture, speculative architecture, actually in order to establish it as not only a profession that you do because you cannot build real buildings, but because it's really important, and by all these stories, you actually talk about important topics. So do you have any architects, speculative or fictional architects that inspire you somehow, or that the works of which you like?
Yeah, from like speculative design, let's say, field, there's this book, I don't know, maybe you know it, it's quite famous, and maybe because not so many books are written on this, it's like speculative everything.
Yeah.
And Dune and Rabbi, who wrote it, they are working in the speculative design field, but also social design field, and I think they are quite interesting, and the projects are not much architectural, but also because I am myself, I feel I'm a bit in between.
Yeah, which is great.
So, yeah, and I don't really feel necessity to define myself exactly. And I always struggle a bit when people call me architect, because I actually didn't receive this proper architecture diploma, so I always find it a bit like, okay, let's call it like that. But also calling me like interior designer is also a bit like random, because I don't work much on interior spaces. Yeah, so.
Yeah, but it's great to take just tools from different disciplines and then and not define yourself, but rather talk about some things and then take necessary tools for that. And okay, I'm also curious about your the collective that you're a part of, no purpose collective. Especially I loved the phrase that this collective is open not only to terrestrials but also to aliens and bots. It's very nice. But can you tell a bit more about this?
Yeah, it's actually quite how to say it? It's a spontaneous project, and it's we call it collective, but I would say it's more as once my friend called it. It's like it's like a number you have in your phone, and you always can call that number, and you will always get an answer from someone. So this is actually a group of people with whom I feel very close, and we all studied in the same department, but in very different years. Maybe in 4 years, different years we studied, but somehow we found each other, and we found similar interests. And when we started it, and we did several projects together. Like last year, I couldn't participate, but my friends, we went we participated in a festival in England, which was initiated by Ram Labor. So we were having a radio broadcasting 1 month and interviewing local people and doing different activities with this radio show. Sometimes we organized once we organized some performative dinner. So we actually also we don't define ourselves exactly who we are. Are we artists or architects or designers or
friends?
Or friends? Yeah, but it's not like fully active collective as many people imagine probably collectives, because I think each of us has their own projects and jobs or whatever. So this is something kind of next to other things. But it's always nice, because if we just get an invitation to some open call or a project, we always share with each other, and sometimes we form with groups of 2 or 3 people, because in total we are, I think, 7 or 8.
Yeah.
But it's and yeah, now also we live in different countries, not all in the Netherlands, but still it's very nice to have this backup and that there's always someone who is interested in similar things, and there's always someone who's up to do something together.
Yeah, but also it's nice because if you have projects in like all these countries, then you have actually an insider who lives in that country, and that makes the project much easier to.
And I think it's also interesting because, of course, many young people want to create these collectives, and at first we were really trying to make it somehow pushing to make it real, you know, like the real collective. And now more I think, more I understand that, when there is quite a big number of people, it's not so easy to always do it, but I like it in a way that it's so open, but that there is always this group who you can trust and you can ask for help or for joining a project or something.
Nice. I see the chat again, and Robert writes again. I believe a lot of your methods can be applied and used by Holabuda. By Holabuda is basically the initiative started. Yeah, I agree completely. And as Robert said as well, that lots of the speculative tools can, in the end, be real. And also, like, profession-wise, a big number of companies, they hire speculative designers to proof check their theories, you know?
Yeah.
Tell them if this technology is worth, is it worth to make it open, put it out in the world. So I agree. So okay, we have some time for the questions from the audience. So you can put them in the commentary, or for those who are with us in the meeting, you can actually ask. So, якщо у вас є питання, ви можете запитати їх прямо вголос. We do it for the first time in this format when people can actually live question. I'm not sure if it works. But yeah, let's wait for a second. No, I don't know. For now, I would really imagine you going also to other post-Soviet countries with workshops like that.
Yeah,
it's really relevant.
Yeah, actually, also how I met Robert and how I gave this workshop. I was selected for Future Architecture platform, and I also got invitations mostly from the countries there. Of course, this topic is still relevant. So.
Yeah, how was actually your experience with Future Architecture platform? Because I once actually applied, but I didn't so. But I've heard from many friends that it's a great platform.
Yeah, I think it's a great, and also what I really like that it pays attention to many countries which are somehow in many cases not really taken into consideration, and of course it includes these organizations from Portugal or Norway, but also includes organizations from Balkan countries, from Baltics, from Eastern Europe, let's say. And I think it's nice because there are so many interesting layers and contexts about urban planning, about architecture, about this alternatives, and then actually it's a platform which shows much more than just typical, let's say, Western Europe discourse, but it shows a bit more what we have in Europe. So I find it very interesting.
And now, like, I actually have a question which just popped up in my head. How was the reaction of your project different in Lithuania and in Dutch context? Because, like, from my experience in this European context, people somehow tend to idealize also this Soviet system. That was from my
Yeah, I know what you mean, but it's always not easy to talk about the same things in Lithuania as in the Netherlands, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think my project here, also, for example, I presented it in Archipri, which is quite, how to say, quite conservative organization for architectural projects, and we are interested in very architectural approaches.
Like really physical, traditional.
It's quite traditional approach. Nothing is wrong with that. It's just that when I got selected, because that year I think my year, and then this year they had this experiment to include also several students from interior architecture field.
Mm-hmm.
So then I got selected to for this interior architecture, but in Archipre. I was thinking a bit like, I don't know, how do I present this project? Because this is very kind of, first it's like very contextual, secondly it's very fictional, and I didn't really produce plans or sections or build like brilliant models or something.
Well, you did somehow. I mean,
But
whole Lithuanian section.
yeah, but I think I was quite. People liked my project, and many people came later to talk about it, and of course I understand it's a bit of there is also a bit of exotism, you know, in the West about these districts and about the Soviet system and these houses and interiors and furniture and whatever. It's something what we haven't experienced. So there is a certain level of exotism, I think, in that.
Yeah.
And in Lithuania, of course, people are so familiar with the context that they see it with a bit different.
More as a thing that is happening, right? So they probably see it, okay, as you mentioned before. It's let's build it.
I'm different. I don't know. Also, I mean, for young generation, yeah, they found it very cool and let's do something. I mean, like very actively they reacted on it, and older generation, I think they found it a bit awkward sometimes.
Yeah.
It's something like, oh, what is that? But I think my ambition was also a bit to create this tension in a good way.
Yeah, and also I wonder what was your like physical representation, because it's also it's always, from my experience, hard when you have this like speculative narratives. You have a nice strong story and like a video or something which communicates the story, but did you have actually artifacts? Yes, you had newspapers, which perfect way. How did you represent it?
I had so my graduation exhibition, and also quite similar I did for my solo exhibition in Lithuania. So I had a screen, the big screen, the video, and then I had a newspaper, and then I printed the section of Lithuania, the one I produced on textile, and it was like a circle which created space. So person to watch a video, you had to come into the space, and actually there was kind of round space. It was like 7 meters textile. Where you could see the whole world, which was a bit like immersive. It was quite minimal, but and for me, I really felt that this was the right way to present it.
Yeah.
And then I got selected for Archipre, for example. I was struggling a bit because they had this very standard presentations of projects, and of course, like for let's say traditional architecture projects, it fits quite well because you want to show plans and site maps and other things. But for my project, I was struggling a bit to find out how to do it. So I used screen and stuff, but it was a bit difficult.
Okay, nice. Okay, we don't have any questions, which is fine. And last chance, guys. Just to ask a question to Ґода. Okay, then I think from my side, I found out most information that I wanted to, and I still hope to see you in person.
Yeah, sure. Surely, yeah.
Yeah, because it's a bit of too much online communication.
Yeah, I know. Like I keep on following. Like I see this posts about the interesting talks and lectures, but somehow I can't force myself anymore to follow them.
Everyone started to
it's some kind of online world is
too much things are happening.
It's a bit too much.
Yeah, but also it gives more possibilities, to meet.
Yeah, surely. I mean, I'm actually impressed how everyone was doing and how people were like giving this lectures, talks, workshops, presentations. Amazing, I think. no one expected that it can go so well, I guess.
Let's see how long it lasts.
Let's-
Okay, thank you very much, Ґода. Thank you for being with us, for answering all the questions.
Thanks for inviting. A really nice initiative.
Yes. See you soon. And
Yeah.
yeah, bye bye. Now I
Bye.
say.
Thanks. Good luck.